Careful, little girl, careful. I was scared, and I didn't talk to anyone about the illness. Only her. Not even the other doctor. He never touched Renee. He just wrote things down.
Yes, that may be a slightly strange start, but then this is a slightly strange game. The Town of Light is a horror-themed psychological thriller, so pretty much sounds like many other titles we've heard of over the last few years, such as games as Outlast or maybe even The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, and many other titles that have appeared on PC and console alike. But this game is dramatically different from those titles, rather relying on jump scares and sinister monsters creeping away in the shadows. It instead pits you with the biggest fear of all, your own trapped mind. Based on true life events in the region of Tuscany in Italy around the early 1930s, this asylum genuinely existed and did some strange and unspeakable acts on people around the time. But the game is all about your descent into madness and how you handle it. You have certain paths and choices to make, which does open up various endings to the game. Whether there's a good or bad one, I don't really know. But the whole thing unfolds and feels like a graphic novel in all of its exposition and how you enjoy the title itself, or an interactive adventure or story than an actual game. There's no weapons to pick up, there's no enemies to fight, there's no jump scares, there's no enemies at all in the game. The only thing that makes you scared is the tale as it unfolds. And there are some suspect and very uncomfortable sections in the game. Although far from unrealistic, these are in fact, sad to say, very realistic, I'm sure. They do make it feel very much like a graphic novel in that aspect.
All I could do was clutch Charlotte tightly while Renee obeyed. He was the master in the realm of light.
These more disturbing sections are reasonably well handled and certainly give you more empathy towards the character and make you feel a little bit more uncomfortable as the story unfolds. And that's the main draw of this game, because there's not a lot else to push you on. It's not a tough game at all. I've got to stop using the word game. It really isn't a tough experience to challenge you. It's probably the best way of putting it. The young girl you play in the game, Renee, is certainly intriguing and has a lot of history that you may want to get involved in, but the game doesn't have any interesting aspects aside the exploration and the story that unfolds. There are some very minor, and I do stress the word minor, puzzles in there, but they are quite literally by the numbers, so there's no point in them actually being in there. You predominantly spend your time walking around sections, examining different objects to trigger the next story sequence, which may involve a doll or another character or a flashback to sections, which again can be visually slightly better, but are just as disturbing and strange as the one in the isolated abandoned asylum. Visually, it's not a bad looking game, but certainly not incredible. It runs on the Unity engine, and it should come as no surprise that I'll cover shortly, and you may have already seen already. Performance is woeful, but this doesn't mean it's down to the engine specifically. The version we're looking at here is on the Xbox One S, and this is the standard version that would appear on the PS4 as well. Most likely that runs at the same 30 FPS at 1920 by 1080 resolution. Here on the Xbox One, it's 1600 by 900, so not a surprise, and at the same 30 FPS. Now, when I first got the title and it first launched, it actually ran with an uncapped frame rate and no VSync, so it tore everywhere at all times and still performed terribly. But now they've capped it at 30, and this is the footage you're seeing here. I didn't get a chance to play. So here the performance is as it stands as of now if you pick this game up on the store, and it's still really, really bad. Even though this isn't a fast-paced, interactive, highly charged action title that needs precise movement, it would be good to at least have a consistent frame rate, and we don't get it at all. The frame rate can fluctuate anywhere between 30 to down below 20 at some point, with you getting long sections that just sit flat at the 20 FPS level. So the game feels bad to control, and the movement is pretty juddery. There's parts that are even worse, where it can dip down into the 18s, and even longer hangs down to 0 when you're just waiting around for sections to judder in as it loads and streams off the hard disk. The game feels like it needs far more time to tweak and optimize. There's points in the game where I was playing and I actually got locked up with the image that I'd picked up, or the object I picked up to examine. I now couldn't move on. It was always there. So whatever object I picked up next, they would just merge into the background. The only way to get rid of this was to quit the title and then reload the chapter again. So all these things point to the fact that it could do with a few more months in development. But that's a bit of a shocker for the game that came out back in 2015 on the PC. It may sound harsh to say this, but the title feels like a very early, old-school PC release that would appear on Steam Greenlight or First Access to give you a go at this game for £5. The fact that this has been released at $13.99 on the store, I think, is a lot of money for a game that only offers up around 3 hours of enjoyment. And the amount that I can use that word game is very limited indeed. You spend all your time picking up objects, looking at the screen and admiring the beauty that is there. Texture quality varies. Some of it is very good, some of it is not so good at all. The lighting quality again is pretty varied. They use light outside with the bright sunshine and sun rays coming through the trees and lots of dense foliage, so they're not hiding away of trying to make this feel like a dark and gloomy foreboding area. There's some dream sequences and some flashbacks which certainly use a flat shaded, almost Guru type shaded colour quality on the characters themselves, and it's completely black and white, and that does actually look slightly better in the visual quality, and it's the only time that you see genuine characters and the density of the polygon meshes in there. So there's certainly signs that the team know how to create nice assets and materials in the game, but the overall quality that you see throughout the title is very samey, and you walk around thinking, where's the next story sequence coming from? If you are going to get intrigued into this title, then it all centres around whether the story intrigues you and you like some of this disturbing area that it can drift into. Performance, like I say here on the Xbox One S, is really, really bad. Even though it doesn't spoil the game, you can still walk around and enjoy it. It doesn't get in the way. It can be quite annoying and frustrating when the movement can be so bad that actually at some point you feel like rubbing your eyes because you've got something wrong with your brain. It's certainly a title that maybe some will enjoy. Myself, I've gone through it, I've played it. It's certainly a story that has affected me in some ways. Whether I've enjoyed it is another matter entirely. I must give the team commendation for actually trying new material and delivering a story and themes that is not the stablemate of video games entirely, and they must be given recommendation for that again, because this is something different and video games can be used to tell all kinds of stories. So for that I commend them. It certainly doesn't fall into the same traps and cliches that a psychological horror game does as well, not relying on jump scares and the standard practices. So again, this all works, as does the soundtrack and music, mixing ambient sounds and the birds tweeting and the leaves with a decent music soundtrack that pops in every now and then.
She must be the key to my memories, to the reasons why. We must find some warm lights. Let's go to the surgical ward.
Whether or not it's worth spending £14 to have that story laid out amongst you as you push your sticks around to find the next sequence to see is entirely up to you. I'd like to thank the fact that I got this as a review copy, and if you are interested you can find it on both the Xbox One store along with on Steam and obviously PSN store, and I believe it's also available in retail if you can pick it up somewhere along the lines. Anyway, that's it for now. If you guys and girls enjoyed this, please leave a like and subscribe below. Give it a thumbs up if you did and a thumbs down if you didn't. I'll catch you guys girls on the next one.
She did things to me. Sometimes she touched me.